after that, I got serious about it. And the one song that came on the Man's Best Friend album, I got a funny feeling down deep inside. I want to meet your creature, wrap you up inside. Don't try to hold me, I'll put you up in chains. You want satisfaction? That bitch is so insane. That's pretty good. But a song that really meant a lot, and I'm kind of sensitive to things, and I felt this weird vibe in the practice place. And I suggested to the band that we cover Motorhead's Ace of Spades, but I got turned down flat. Oh, those guys suck. They're horrible. Well, that's the kind of, she's, man. I was in the wrong room. But Mike Landauer didn't like Motorhead either. Kim and I and Kip saw him the year that I was playing with Mike in San Francisco. We took a drive down to see Kip Doran, and we went into the city. He lived north, kind of by Prairie Sun Studio. In fact, in the same area as Prairie Sun Studio. And, man, we went to a gig, and the keyboard player for Winger, can't remember his name, and Eric Martin was there, and all these Bay Area guys. He was friends with these guys. I think he used to be Eric Martin's roommate, but we went down to the old Waldorf and saw Squeeze on 4th of July, so 1981, and because I was a big Squeeze fan. It was Squeeze and G.E. Watt, the guy that played guitar on the Saturday Night Live band. But that was great. But I saw a sign, a cardboard sign that said Motorhead Monday, Metal Monday, and I thought, man, we got to come back down here. And we were going to leave that weekend, and I had borrowed my mom's credit card for Standard, and there's Arco, and there's only one Arco in the city. There's a million Standard stations, but it was 4th of July weekend, so everything was closed. And we ended up sleeping in some marina parking lot. It was so cold, man. Nick Nolte says the coldest winter I ever spent was the summer I spent in San Francisco, and he couldn't have been more right. So we drove back up to Santa Rosa and picked up Kip and came back down to San Francisco, to the city, and saw Motorhead with a band called Ranger opening, and that became Night Ranger. And the sound guy for that show was Ronnie Montrose, and Kip knew the bass player, and Bill Church was there, who became Sammy Hagar's bass player, and so he was talking to them, and that's pretty cool. And Night Ranger was in volume there about here, and then Motorhead came on, and it was a wall of Marshalls. It was awesome. And I think they'd had a break from the Ozzy tour at the time, but because they'd do one-off gigs, and the old Waldorf, if you've never been there, wasn't that big, and it had a lower ceiling, not like the Roseland. It might have been about the same size as the first floor of the Roseland Starry Night, except the ceiling was down to where the balcony was. So you were kind of trapped as a prisoner of sound. And man, there was nothing like that. Everybody that was going to be the metal forces, the guys like Brian Lew and Bill Hale and KJ Doughton, I think, was there. He became, Metallica's fan club, the guys that really mattered. I didn't know them, but I met them on our first Wild Dogs gig in San Francisco. But they were all there, but nobody else headbanging. I was headbanging. I had a leather one-studded wristband that I got at the Leather Works. And it was a cone wristband, and yeah, pretty metal with my tiger shirt on. And I was thrashing and had a lot of space to do it because everybody cleared out. I was like, Moses clearing the water. But man, Motorhead was amazing. And Tom Pig had turned me on to Motorhead in 1978, but live, there's nothing like that. That sound penetrated your cells. And in that small area, it was just like in your bones. It was amazing. We drove home to Portland that night after the show. Kip and Mike were kind of on the side. It was a little too loud for them. But we stopped at an A.M.P.M. because I was starving, and I microwaved a hot dog. I remember this plainly. And they said, you should probably get something. You should probably wait for that to cool off. Oh, man, I'm starving. And I ate the hot dog, and it just burned. I could hear it sizzle. It was like my gullet was sizzling. Yeah, 40 years ago, man. That's a long time. I didn't think I'd really live past 27. I did my best to... But somebody needed me here or something. And, yeah, I'm still here at 60, almost 62. So I ended up joining up with Mike, not Michael Landauer, but Pete Holmes and Jeff. They lost their practice place, and so they moved to Danny Kurth's basement. And the ceiling was like barely 6.5 feet tall. And Jeff would have 2 half stacks and 2 heads, and Danny had 2 SVTs and a 500-watt Cran amp. And I brought my vintage 50-watt head and my Iceland because I was going to play rhythm guitar. And Bill Riley, the singer, was not going to. He didn't show up. I didn't think he had any intention to. So we had a recording date at Recording Associates, and to be a band for their class to practice on. And so I had one song, and nobody had any songs, and it was Fugitive of the Law. And Kip Doran played lead guitar on it, and Jeff did, and I did, and I played rhythm guitar. You're going nowhere when you're a fugitive of the law. You know you're going nowhere when you're a fugitive of the law. So they liked us. And so they said, hey, can you guys come back in a couple of weeks when we'll have another session? And because they were going to mix the songs and they wanted to record some more. And so we got together every day in the afternoon at Danny's house. That's when I got to be friends with Diane Kurth. And we did that every day for like about a year. It all kind of stopped when we got Dean. But so we went back in with 3 more songs. And 2 were by Danny and 1 by Jeff. And then Pete Holmes decided to join Black and Blue, who were going to move to Los Angeles, and Nothing Flat. And that was a cover band. So he took his drums over there, and we called up Jamie, who lived up the street, and said, hey, we need a drummer, and you're a great drummer. See, Jamie used to play drums and then moved out to front when Julian Raymond left town. So he came over, and we worked out the 5 songs that are on the first Wild Dogs album. Born to Rock and Life's a Game. And 2 wrongs don't make a right, yeah. And I Need Love. I need love to call my own. And funny, the first song we sent to Mike Varney, I saw Mike Varney on TV, on MTV, when MTV was music television. And he said, we're looking for a band, send us your tapes. And I sang on that Fugitive of the Law song, and it sounded kind of like Gene Simmons or Johnny Winter. And he said I sounded, your singer, is he, because we didn't send a picture, is your singer a Negro? He used that term. His voice sounds very, have him not sing so Negro-esque. Okay. That was a compliment, and I was offended also at the same time. So that's when we did the other 3 songs, and then Pete left and Jamie joined, and the songwriting, the process was intense. We practiced 3 or 4 hours every day, Monday through Thursday, because the guys had gigs to do. They're in cover bands. And then I got onto the KGON album. We didn't rig it, but we called up all of our friends, and that's when all my friends were alive and everybody else's. And we got them to call in and vote for us. And we actually won 2 rounds of it. And they were going to just they picked Born to Rock, my song. And that song got so much airplay, man, for years. And even 20 years later, the Closet Classics would play it. And I used to go out to KGON and when the studio was out in Clackamas and hang out with Dick Sheets, and that was a party, man. That was really cool. And oh yeah, we took Ian Hill from Judas Priest out there once with Kevin Millay. And Ian Hill was cool. He's like the only really original player in that group still. And we got offered. I said, dude, Mike Varney. I used to talk to him on the phone all the time. And at night, and I said, you should take the band that gets the best response and do a full album with the band and put that on your label and not just do compilations. He said, okay, how about you guys? You got half of it. Go in and record. See if you can work a deal with the studio like you did for the first ones. And we found Dean by this time. And the songwriting process just went out the window because Dean was a little hyper, and you couldn't. Jeff was right. You couldn't control him. You couldn't actually make him focus. He could play something you handed to him, but sitting there and working it out and hey, let's try this a different way, it just was not working. He was definitely going to be a live player. And we had to get some gigs because if we didn't get some gigs, he would not be with us. I think he tried out for Kiss at the time. His mom got a job at the record label in New York so she could help him out. Turns out me and my record deal and moving him to the Bay Area is what kind of got him into one of the biggest groups in history. Journey and Bad English, but Mike Varney was a great source for a lot of stuff. But that's how we did our first record, and we did the second record. And by the second record, people were conscious of of what we've done, the other guys in the band. That's my if I have an advice for any of you guys out there, young bands, if you're the leader, don't let the bands look at the reviews and don't let them see any press for a couple albums, because they'll try to please the one guy that hates the band that won't ever like the band. And that's kind of how I got tossed overboard. But it was all for the better because I turned out with my own solo deal that was worth, a lot more money. I got a big budget for Dr. Mastermind, and I took Dean with me and got to play with Kurt James, who took Yngwie Malmsteen's spot in Steeler. And then later on, he took his place in Graham Bonnet's band, and he was kind of following. He's an amazing player. But the landscape was changing for guitar anyway, so I think I'll leave it there and did a few songs, and I don't know what it's going to sound like, but thanks for hanging out with me for a minute and listen to my stories, and all of you people watching on TV. Appreciate that. Go to usmetal.com. That's my website, and there's all kinds of stuff there. All the records. I've made 40, actually I've made like 45 records since 1980, and a lot of them I just stopped. But a lot of everything is on the freebies page on this website. So if you buy something, I send you a link to this freebies page. It has at least 24 records that I'm not ever going to get replicated onto disc. CDs are going bye-bye, and so did the guy that made them for me. And nobody else can even touch the deal because he was doing it for the majors. I got hooked up by Andy McKay, and he said, "Kid, this is how you do it, and you don't need to pay. We don't pay $1,000 for 1,000 CDs. We pay 20 cents each." And so he hooked me up, and that was great for a lot of records. But usmetal.com. I'm Matt McCourt. I was with a band called the Wild Dogs in Portland, Oregon, but everybody thought we were from the Bay Area because our label was there. We played there a lot. In fact, our first gig was in San Francisco at the Stone, and MTV had a crew come out there to do a follow-up story on the story they did with Mike Varney, and that's how I found him. And I already had a record out, so I kind of had a foot in the door and knew what to do. And it's a dirty business. It's much better if you work for the label and on the other side of it, I think. But here I am, trying to make up for it for pretty much my 40 years, right? Wow, thinking about 40 years ago. The world was a different place, wasn't it? Thank you, and good night. I'm Matt McCourt.